sure he's gathered both bedrooms together. Good morning. Decorate the handrails.
Oh, yeah. I read that somewhere too.
Well, but it took me a couple of years here to get up to not decorate this and to not put poinsettias here and there.
I don't know what this is.
Should
Should it be there?
Yes. Yeah, I come in and I'm supposed to be up there and there's poinsettias here and crapper on the rail. It's like, my knees don't work. And if one of you would exchange the Charles, let them come down the steps, that would be wonderful.
Yes, yes.
You get us to light? You get us to light up?
Did you check the thing? Leave it out.
Our gathering words this morning are adapted from a traditional Anishinaabe prayer. Light the sacred fire in honor of the Sacred One who teaches love, compassion, and honor, that we may heal the earth and heal each other. And welcome to worship at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Greensboro. I am Marie Hauk, and I am a member of this congregation. Unitarian Universalists believe that each person has a worthy relationship with the Spirit, with the Holy, with the source of all life, with that abiding mystery some call God. Though we name it and know it differently from one another, and we believe that because we are interconnected, nobody is free until we all are free. So we strive to build beloved community here on earth in our fellowship with one another and in our work for justice. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you have found your way here, welcome. A warm welcome to our guest musician today, Esther Garcia Marino. We're also overjoyed to welcome the Reverend Mia McLean. She is an artist, a pastor, and a lover of king cakes. But who isn't? She currently serves as the associate pastor at Myers Park Baptist Church in Charlotte, North Carolina, where she works to create and sustain a vibrant adult faith development program, as well as coordinating and facilitating justice initiatives and community partnerships. Mia has a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Musical Theater from Syracuse, New York University. She is a licensed Baptist minister and is ordained in the United Church of Christ. Prior to her living into her call to ministry, she lived into her arts career, performing in theaters across the country, composing and executive producing projects. So our standard Sunday morning quiz. Should you have your cell phones on during church? All right, make sure you turn them off or at least on silent. Should you take your masks off unless you are at the pulpit? Okay, you leave your masks on while you're in the building. And finally, where are we singing? We will sing our benediction hymn for, hearty souls out on the labyrinth. But other than that, if we make music in here, it is humming rather than singing. Steve Andrews will light our chalice this morning. Please join me in our chalice lighting words, which are found in your order of worship. We light this chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, to remind us to connect in spirituality and service, to care for each other and the world, and to create loving community. And now please join us in our church covenant. A covenant contains the promises we make to one another in response to the great gift of living, holding ourselves to our holy and highest aspirations. We, the members of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Greensboro, do covenant to promote a search for personal meaning, respecting the individual truth in a community process of quest, speak and act with caring, courtesy, and love, thereby maintaining emotional, physical, and spiritual safety for all. Support UUCG and denominational efforts with our resources. Combat injustice. Nurture our children on their spiritual journey, and hold ourselves to this covenant, especially during times of conflict and disagreement.
I invite you all to join me in humming our opening hymn, We Shall Overcome. We shall We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in our hearts, I do believe we'll walk hand in hand someday. We shall all be free. We shall all be free. We shall all be free someday. Oh, deep in our hearts, we do believe we shall overcome someday. Ashe. Do that from my seat, though. It is beautiful to be together with you and to sing and hum with you this morning, and always grateful for my friend, Reverend Sadie, who I met in seminary, for the invitation. And the last time I was with you in person was 2019. So it's good to be back in person, and I'm grateful for that opportunity. We gather in gratitude this morning, turning our hearts to thanks and praise for the gift of living in the presence of the Spirit that animates all life, and in the knowledge that we are powerfully, profoundly connected to all that is, all that has been, and all that will be. So please continue to email your joys and sorrows, and the instructions I've been told are in your e-news. And at any time during our service, you can go to our joys and sorrows table to light a candle, a symbol of the ways our burdens are eased and joys are magnified, knowing they are held in common. I invite you now to offer the names of those people on your hearts, living or dead, near or far, that this community might hold them in prayer and in love. You can type them in the comments for those of you joining us online, or you can speak them out right now. During these few minutes of silence, I invite you to focus on something or someone you are remembering especially today, or just the sensation of your chair supporting your body. Will you find a comfortable place in your seat and take a few easy breaths as we settle into our shared silence together? We send all of these thoughts, prayers, spoken and silent, up to the love that holds us all. Let us be in sacred conversation together as I offer words of prayer. Divine creators and creatures of the universe, we come today bearing griefs, we come bearing sorrow. Some of us come bearing joys, happiness for all that has been shared with and without family this week. We come grateful for the ground that we stand on, for the people who have nurtured it for centuries long before we arrived. We say thank you to the ground. We come saying thank you to the divine breath that moves throughout the universe, blowing trees and windmills and keeping us full of life. Thank you. We say thank you for each other, for the ability to gather once again in person and online, for technology that makes all of this possible, for the hands and feet that hold this community. We say thank you. We ask these things for ourselves, that you will be with us, with each other, and support us, that love will be with us, with each other, and support us, for those we love and for those we do not love, and together, if you feel called, we say amen and ashe.
We sing the things we cannot say, our prayers, our yearnings, our heartbreak, and our hope. Please join me in our humming meditation, Spirit of Life.
At this time, we have a time for all ages, and I like hearing you talk back to me. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, and feel free to shout it out or type in the chat. What was the favorite thing you ate this week?
Pumpkin pie.
Pumpkin pie, okay. Mashed potatoes, all right. Pancakes, okay, yes, pancakes. Gravy, ooh, that's good, yes. Turkey, all right. Ham and dressing, yes, I love dressing, yes. Ooh, I was waiting for it, macaroni and cheese, yes, I had some good macaroni and cheese this week. I asked you to do that because I was thinking about all of the things many of us who were able to share time with family and share food were able to eat this week, and I had gratitude for it. It's that one time of year where I could eat honey baked ham. I don't eat it all the time, but I get to eat it this time of the year. But I started thinking about where that food came from. And my gratitude began to expand. My friend made a great red velvet cake, and I don't even like red velvet cake, but this cake was good. And I started thinking about all the little pieces of the cake that made the cake happen. The eggs, Somebody had to get the eggs, and somebody had to milk the cow, and somebody had to get the flour, and all the pieces that come together so we can sit, many of us, comfortably at a table and indulge in our favorite thing this time of year. And the gratitude began to expand beyond my wildest expectations. I couldn't be thankful enough because there are so many pieces of the red velvet experience that I can't even remember to thank the Creator for. But in this moment, I want you to think about your favorite thing. And you can do this silently or call it out and give thanks for the little pieces that made it happen. The people that made it happen, the animals. You can call it out if you must. Yes. Yes. Yes, we are grateful, and our gratitude expands when we begin to pull the pieces apart of all the things that happen in our lives. The gratitude expands. And so I would love for you this week to go forth and think through all of the little minutiae, the little details that make the joys, the few joys that we have in this world happen. Let that gratitude expand within you and around you. And I hope that you can see how that can spread out to others. It's the little things that meet us where we are at the table of love. Amen.
One of the ways that we live out our mission to create a loving community is to contribute financially to the ministries of this congregation and to the good works of our community partners. We are sharing the plate this month with Carolina Abortion Fund. We know that without money, abortion rights are not enough. We know that it is mostly poor people and people of color who are denied access to appropriate care. And so we celebrate the blessing that is abortion care, and we remember that a pregnant person is a life that matters too, not just the host of a future life. We recall that before the rallying cry was "My body, my choice," it was free abortion on demand without apology. To honor those brave people who paved the way for safety and dignity in reproductive care, we give generously. If you would like to make a contribution via PayPal to the church for our offering to be split with Carolina Abortion Fund, you can do so on our website. You can also mail a check. Ushers will come forward to collect the offering with long baskets. Our offering will now be safely and gratefully received.
I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. Together we share, and from this we live. I'm thankful for my wife and this stool, as I forgot my strap this morning. I'm on my way to the freedom land. To the freedom land. I'm on my way. I'm on my way to the freedom land. To the freedom land. I'm on my way to the freedom land. I'm on my way. God, I'm on my way. I asked my sister, come and go with me. Come go with me. and go with me.
Come go with me.
I ask my sister, come and go with me. I'm on my way, great God, I'm on my way. I ask my brother,
That's my brother.
go with me.
Come go with me.
Ask my brother,
That's my brother.
come go with me.
Come go with me.
I ask my brother, come and go with me. I'm on my way, great God, I'm on my way. They say no,
They say no.
anyway.
Going anyhow.
No,
They say no.
going anyhow.
Going anyhow.
They say no, going anyhow. I'm on my way, great God, I'm on my way. I'm on my way.
On my way.
Won't turn back.
And I won't turn back.
On my way.
I'm on my way.
I won't turn back.
I won't turn back.
On my way. I won't turn back. I'm on my way.
Great God, I'm on my way.
Our reading this morning is from the book of Leviticus, chapter 25, the New Revised Standard Version. The one spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel, and say to them, when you enter the land that I am giving you, the land shall observe a Sabbath for the Holy One. 6 years you shall sow your field, and 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather in their yield. But in the 7th year there shall be a Sabbath of complete rest for your land, a Sabbath for the Holy One. You shall not sow your field or prune your vineyard. You shall not reap the aftergrowth of your harvest or gather the grape of your unpruned vine. It shall be a year of complete rest for the land. You may eat what the land yields during the Sabbath, you, your servants, your hired and your bound laborers who live with you. For your livestock also, and for the wild animals in your land, all its yield shall be for food. You shall count off 7 weeks of years, 7 times 7 years, so that the period of 7 weeks of years gives 49 years. Then you shall have the trumpet sounded loudly on the 10th day of the 7th month. On the Day of Atonement, you shall have the trumpet sounded throughout all your land. And you shall hallow the 50th year, and you shall proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you, and you shall return every one of you to your property, and every one of you to your family."
Thank you for reading, Marie. Many of you, like I, celebrated with family and friends on Thursday. Some of you call it Thanksgiving. Some of you call it a day of feasting or just a day off from work where you can eat some food with some people that you haven't seen in a long time. Whatever it is, many of us gathered. We gathered around tables. And we had some of our favorite dishes, many of them traditional dishes. You called out a few of them a few moments ago. And so I was invited to a very fancy shindig at my friend and his husband's house. They had a full setup, 15 people. It was it was quite the spread. It had many dishes. And of course, as usual, I get asked to say the prayer. I don't know, they think I'm holy or something. I just come for the food. I didn't come for all the praying and stuff. But I do my duty. I'm present, I get asked to say the prayer. And as I was praying, I started thinking about the huge spread that his husband had prepared. I started thinking about how it got to that table, all of the many grocery trips he made back and forth, and kept forgetting things. I started thinking about how the ham made it to Harrod's Teeter. I started thinking about how the the mac and cheese, all the pieces came together in that exercise that we were doing a few moments ago. And I started wondering about the farm workers. I thought about the migrants who work many of the fields in this country. According to farmworkerjustice.org, an estimated 2.4 million farm workers work on farms and ranches in the United States. The large majority of those farm workers are immigrants. And of those immigrants, 49% lack authorized immigration status under current U.S. laws. I was thinking about them in the prayer, and I didn't have time to form the words, so I didn't get to give thanks. But this morning, I just want to give a little thanks for the migrants work in the fields year-round to put food on our tables. We give thanks. For the refugees who made it possible for many of us to have sweet potatoes and collard greens on our tables, green beans for the casserole, and cranberries for the turkey accoutrement. We give thanks. We give thanks knowing that while many of these workers are making it possible for so many of us to have access to the foods of our choice at stores like Harris Teeter and Publix, many of them are going back home to food deserts, to communities where accessing reasonable fresh produce is a difficult task. They reap and they glean, and neither they nor the land have rest. They reap and they glean, and they barely make a living wage, if at all. They reap and they glean, and only a few farm workers have employment benefits. Do you know that at least 33% of farm worker families earned incomes placing them below the poverty line? That in 2016, the annual income for an individual farm worker was roughly $18,000. That despite the high level of poverty, most farm workers don't have access to public benefits. The poverty and the disenfranchisement and the lack of equity are carceral systems. The lack of access to much of the very foods they are reaping for us are a product of unjust systems. The poverty that places them at higher risk for major medical crisis, the lack of quality education, the inability to have stable and safe housing, all of these things are what happens when the wealthiest country in the world becomes comfortable with inequity, becomes comfortable with greed, comfortable with the rich getting richer and the poor getting death sentences. And this inequity is the very system the writers of Leviticus are trying to abolish in the 25th chapter. Now, I pause here because I know some of you heard Leviticus and were ready to bounce out the door. I know it's Leviticus. I know it's the Old Testament, make you feel a little uncomfortable. Okay? This book of laws has been twisted to justify homophobia, slavery, and a myriad of other dangerous beliefs and practices, so I understand. Leviticus contains so much fine detail, though, concerning regulations of sacrifice and cleanliness and holiness and morality. Chapter 17 says, "No person among you shall eat blood." They should have said that to that vampire thing in Midnight Mass, that Midnight Mass show. Chapter 18 says, "You shall not approach a woman to uncover her nakedness." Okay, great. Chapter 18 also says, "You shall not have sexual relations with your kinsman's wife." Okay, great. And over again, it reminds us to keep the statutes and all the ordinances and observe them. But I understand why people throw it away, because Leviticus also says things like don't eat shellfish, don't mix fabrics, or it's an abomination. Half of us in here would be an abomination according to this text, right? and other controversial things. But I wonder if there is any hope for us in this third book of the Hebrew Bible. I wonder, as my preaching professor used to say in seminary, is there any good news left for the people? Is there any good news in Leviticus? Well, in the 25th chapter, perhaps there is good news. In the 25th chapter, we encounter a very detailed description of what the Sabbath should look like and mean for the people of Israel. Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when you enter the land that I am giving you, the land shall observe a Sabbath. It also goes on to say that every 50 years you should set the captives free. You should forgive everybody's student loans. Well, it didn't say student loans, but it said debt. You should forgive everybody's debt. And if any of your kin fall on hard times, you should redeem them. Does this passage have anything to say to us? Does this passage have anything to say to you this morning? Those of you who find sacred meaning in Bibles and those of you who don't. Those of you who have thrown Leviticus away or Christian scriptures away or God away. Does this have anything for us this morning? What does proclaiming liberty throughout the land have to offer us on November 28th, 2021? Ecuadorian theologian C. Rene Padilla reminds us that even to the uninitiated reader of Leviticus, the centrality of economic issues in this biblical passage is obvious. The basic problems that hindered human relationships in biblical times continue to obstruct human relationships today. The abuse of power, the ambition for material gain, the exploitation of the poor. This passage challenges all of the above. It challenges the abuse of power on behalf of landlords. It confronts the ways the ambition for wealth and material gain have exploited a huge portion of the population that is indebted. Through the 25th chapter, we get glimpses of a more hopeful vision. Setting the earth free. Setting the captives of economic injustice and poverty free. Setting ourselves free from precarious productivity. All through a year of rest and rejuvenation and resetting the soil. To understand this chapter, you must have a broader understanding of the Israelites' ownership laws versus the Canaanites' ownership laws. According to scholar Randy Rittenauer, Jubilee laws of Israel protected the economic status of families, guaranteeing the relatively secure possession of their inherited land. In Canaan, however, the land that the Israelites wanted to occupy, much of the property was owned by kings and nobles. Everybody else just paid rent. They didn't own anything. Within the Israelite culture, there was the hope of equitable distribution of land, even as the Israelites claimed to take over Canaan and other neighboring areas. And now this is where it gets a little tricky and controversial, because we know that there is no true equitable distribution of land that does not belong to you. Not in good faith. Land that doesn't belong to any of us. As we even honored Native American Heritage Day on Friday, many of us have come to understand that we are all caught up in this system that has promoted ownership of land that has belonged to indigenous communities for centuries, beyond any of our ancestors getting here by choice or by chains. So to think of Jubilee in this precise context is almost an exercise for naught. If we are to just limit it to land inheritance or physical enslavement, yet there is something here that beckons to be called forth. In the complexity of what Jubilee aims to do, that is, proclaim liberty throughout the land, might it be asking something of us in return? Might Jubilee be requiring something of us in return in this season? Jubilee is supposed to set the captives free, yes. It is supposed to ensure that economic catastrophe doesn't lead to cycles of inescapable poverty. But as written hours suggest, the Jubilee law is not concerned with why a family lost its power to support itself, only that it has. The Jubilee laws tell us what to do. They don't ask how we got here or why we let injustice run rampant for so long that people are begging for basic needs to be met. But if we are to be Jubilee people, we must always be asking why. We must always be asking how such insidious injustices keep happening over and over again. Why is there a school to prison pipeline? How is it that our indigenous elders are becoming homeless? It's not enough to just do what the text says, to do Jubilee. It's not enough to just cancel student loans, though I would really like that. I'm going to come back to that. We must interrogate how we got here in the first place. Why has this person accumulated thousands of dollars in credit card debt? Is it because they are paying their rent with a credit card? Or their groceries with a credit card because they don't make a living wage? I don't need you to merely pay off my medical debts. I need you to ask why we live in one of the wealthiest countries in the world and we don't have universal health care. Don't just fight for abolition of the inmates at the state and federal prisons. I need you to ask how they got there. What systems were they bound by that led them in the direction of this kind of punishment? What biases were working against them? The year of Jubilee is not merely a year of liberation. Perhaps Jubilee isn't a year at all, but an ongoing, lifelong commitment to releasing people from burdens, little by little, to asking how they got burdened in the first place, so that we don't keep repeating vicious cycles. Jubilee is an ongoing commitment to making sure all people in all lands have basic needs met before crisis ensues. Now, I am not promoting a Disneyfied reality here. I'm not promoting that. I am not suggesting that to solve all of the world's problems, all we have to do is let the farm workers glean the land. I do think we should let the farm workers glean. Yes, absolutely, we should open the fields to them, and not just every 7 years, but because that's not enough. As I wrestled with this text, I had to ask myself why I thought it was okay to give my neighbor the leftovers every 7 years. You know, there's a difference between reaping and gleaning. Usually reaping is on the front end. You get the best goods. And then gleaning, you get the leftovers, the things that are left over after you're done reaping. And I had to wrestle with why we would think it's okay to follow Jubilee as it is, giving our neighbors the leftovers. Yes, the fields should be open for reaping, not just gleaning. The literal fields should be open, and we should desire to open the figurative fields of civil rights and justice to all people, regardless of social or economic status, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity, regardless of racial or ethnic identity, not just for gleaning, not just for leftover justice, the scraps, but for reaping. Regardless of how much money you do or don't have in the bank, regardless of how many degrees you do or don't have hanging on the wall, the fields of quality education should be open for all to reap. The fields of affordable housing should be open for all to reap. The field of righteousness should be open for all to reap and to rest and to have their basic needs met. This is the Jubilee I'm talking about. This is liberation. This is abolition. When we discuss abolition, we cannot just be talking about freedom from prison. Many of us are already incarcerated by suffocating confines of poverty before we even make it to actual prison. Many of us are already imprisoned by redlining and the denial of home buying loans long before a physical arrest. Many children are already enslaved in educational systems that start planning their prison beds in second grade. We must open the fields. We must remove the barriers. We must be willing to share more than our leftovers if we are to embrace the spirit of Jubilee. We must be willing to ask the difficult questions. Why? Why are things the way they are? As I close, I was discovering some forms of Jubilee that have been taking place in our society. And I came across an amazing organization that spoke to the spirit of Jubilee that has been so far and so long forgotten in our culture. Over the last century, the number of Black farmers has dropped greatly. There are reports that Black farmers have lost more than 12 million acres of land, 90% of their previous holdings. This is due to a myriad of issues related to discrimination and property title issues. All these things related to cycles of oppression. But one organization is doing something about it. Jubilee Justice works with Black farmers throughout the South to empower them by providing them with funding, legal services, and farming resources. Jubilee Justice visits with marginalized farmers and migrant farmers to help them figure out what their land and businesses need to thrive. They are not just making a way for leftovers. They are not just making a way for toxic charity that may or may not trickle down in time. They are making room for reaping, for a new kind of abolition, for liberty to be spread throughout the entire land so everyone has their needs met. Could we be Jubilee Justice people? Could we say, I don't want you to just survive, I want you to thrive. I don't just want my neighbor to be at someone else's mercy for 7 years or every 50 years. I want my neighbor to be free now, Jubilee now, justice now, abolition now. That is the call. If we are to be Jubilee people, if we are to be Jubilee people who ask why, who ask how, who ask how long, O Creator, until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. This is the charge today. Will you be Jubilee Justice people with me? Amen. I invite you to join us as we extinguish the chalice. Will you join me in these words? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
It says here announcements, but frankly, I don't know of any this morning, which is kind of unusual. About the only thing I can do is remind you that our safety team continues to meet on a fairly regular basis to stay up to date on on what's going on in the world currently regarding COVID, and will make changes to our safety protocol as deemed appropriate. And now it's time to say goodbye to the lovely folks who have joined us online. Bye, folks.
Now receive this sending or benediction. Let us go forth to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with each other as we continue to fight for all that is just and right, until every person has needs met, until we have rest and rejuvenation. Amen.
Our benediction hymn, Shalom Havarim, is one that we sing outdoors so that you can all raise your voices, but with your masks on. I know it's a little chilly, but not that cold. I'm from Minnesota. I know I have a different standard, but but I invite you outside to sing Shalom Havarim.